On my birthday, I woke up with a strange mixture of hope and dread. I had invited some old friends, people who had known me since the days when I struggled to make ends meet. Among them was Daniel, someone I had once considered my closest friend, though over the years his words had become sharper, his laughter often at my expense. Still, I wanted to believe this day would be different, that maybe he'd show some kindness. When he arrived, he didn't even offer a smile. Instead, as everyone gathered in the small cafe where I first met them for old time's sake, Daniel raised his glass and said, "To our birthday boy, who still hasn't achieved anything worth remembering." Laughter broke out from a few others, nervous and awkward, but it hit me harder than I expected. He called me a failure, right there in front of everyone, as though my struggles defined me forever. For a moment, I stayed quiet. I let his words linger in the air, watching the smirk on his face as he thought he had won some invisible battle. The old me might have argued, might have stormed out, but I had learned that silence carries power. I smiled instead, calm and steady, and thanked everyone for coming. Inside, though, I was already planning how this day would turn. When the meal ended, I told them I had arranged a little surprise. Daniel scoffed, muttering something about cheap tricks, but I ignored him. I led them outside, where a sleek black car waited. My driver opened the door for me, and I motioned for everyone to join me. Confusion spread across their faces, and Daniel frowned, clearly unsettled by something he didn't understand. The drive was quiet at first. Daniel tried to make jokes, saying I had probably rented the car just for show. I didn't respond. Instead, I let the city blur past as we approached the high gates of my property. When they swung open, revealing the long driveway lined with trees, the group went silent. Daniel leaned forward, staring in disbelief at the mansion that grew larger with every turn of the wheels. We stopped in front of the grand entrance, where a fountain glimmered under the sun. My staff opened the doors, welcoming us inside. The marble floors reflected the chandeliers, the walls decorated with art collected from my travels. I watched as my so-called friends, including Daniel, struggled to process what they were seeing. Their eyes darted around, wide and uncertain, as though they had stepped into another world. Daniel tried to regain his composure. "This can't be yours," he muttered. But his voice lacked its usual confidence. I calmly told him it was my home, built from years of hard work, investments, and sleepless nights. I walked them through the vast halls, the library stacked with books I had studied, the gallery of awards from ventures they had never cared to ask about. Every room was a chapter of the story I had written in silence while they mocked me. Outside, I showed them the garage. The doors slid open to reveal rows of cars, classics, sports, and custom builds. The group gasped, whispering to each other, their earlier laughter replaced by awe. Daniel's jaw tightened as he tried to hide his shock. I could see the envy brewing in his eyes, though he tried to cover it with disbelief. Then came the final reveal. I led them to my office, where I opened a drawer and laid out documents, proof of my fortune, the companies I owned, the properties under my name. No words were necessary. The evidence spoke louder than any defense I could have made back at that cafe. Their silence was sweeter than applause, and Daniel's trembling hands told me everything I needed to know. I turned to him, meeting his eyes. "You called me a failure," I said, my voice steady. "But failure is just a moment. What matters is what comes after." He said nothing, his pride crumbling under the weight of the truth he could no longer deny. The others tried to congratulate me, their tones suddenly warm and friendly, but I knew better. Their respect came not from loyalty but from what they had seen. And that was fine. I hadn't done this to win them back. I had done it to remind myself that I no longer lived in the shadow of their judgments. Daniel left without another word. I watched him go, shoulders hunched, his arrogance broken. For years, he had mocked me, using my struggles as his entertainment. But now, he would have to live knowing the one he had called a failure had risen far above him. That was my revenge, not through anger, but through success. As the night settled in, I stood on the balcony of my mansion, looking over the city lights. My birthday had begun with insult but ended with clarity. I didn't need their approval. I had built my life piece by piece, and now it stood tall behind me. The world could call me whatever it liked, but I knew the truth. I was no failure. And in that quiet moment, as the stars spread across the sky, I realized that the best answer to mockery was not argument, not bitterness, but the undeniable proof of what I had become. My story was no longer theirs to define. It was mine, and it spoke louder than any words they could ever throw at me.